Hollywood can make mistakes, even if the Bible doesn't. The next time you're watching the classic movie, The 10 Commandments, keep your eyes open for some of the little mistakes that show up in the movie. For example, when you see the baby Moses floating down the Nile, if you look carefully, you can see a safety pin on his diaper. Of course, there were no safety pins back then, but I guess that's better than Velcro, right? And when Moses is brought out of the Nile, the nurse has a zipper on her dress. By the way, the zipper was invented in 1891 AD, long after Moses. When Moses approaches the burning bush on Mount Sinai, you can see tracks from the camera dolly visible on the ground behind him. Whoops. And when you see Moses on top of a large rock, you might notice he's wearing a wristwatch. These are just some of the things that Hollywood gets wrong that the Bible doesn't get wrong. The Bible's infallible. Hollywood is not. One of the phrases that we find in the Old Testament that is repeated over and over again is about God hardening the heart of Pharaoh. Now think about that for a second. Does God harden hearts? What does that mean? Well, if you've grappled with that question, you're not alone. Martin Luther grappled with it in his book, The Bondage of the Will. He asked the question, does God actively cause someone's heart to be hardened? And Luther's answer was no. He says when the Bible says God hardens the heart of Pharaoh, God is not creating fresh evil in the heart of an innocent man. All God has to do for someone's heart to become hardened is to withhold his own grace. For God to harden a heart, he simply withholds grace. That is, he gives a person over to his own ambition, his own desires. You ever stop to consider that the difference between you and Pharaoh is God's grace? The reason your heart isn't harder than it is, or your neck isn't stiffer than it is because of God's grace in your life. Apart from God's grace, you and Pharaoh would have a lot in common. So the next time you feel your neck is stiffening or you find your heart is hardening, stop and consider what Jesus has done to rescue you from yourself. Remind yourself of God's grace. That's the antidote for a hardened heart.
Thank you for listening to Encouragement. If you've been refreshed, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share a little encouragement with someone you love. Encouragement is a podcast from Family Radio. These stories are just a taste of the stories you can hear every day. Listen at familyradio.org or find more encouragement on the Family Radio app.